सर या तुम्ही पण हां सर
So how are you? You tend to pick those. Yes.
When you were in school, college, a person without a finger, same thing, West Indian bowlers, it was a sight to see. I think how of everyone sucks for being they got more strength, and I don't know what else to tell you. Sir, this is the ball that I really yes, sir. When it was lost, yeah, and I said, yes, absolutely, sir, would you please? Sign again. Oh, yes. It has been a fair, so I don't know what to say. Sir, Ani, sir, I have been. It is all thanks to him, sir, that he has. Sir, इधर भी sign चाहिए.
Excuse me, light थोड़ा.
Sir, इधर भी sign चाहिए. बस.
हाँ काय पाहिजे रे?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Stop there! Very stop there!
आम्ही पडेगा फोटो दिसला हो जाने बात लेंस दे दीजिए कैमरा वन पिक्चर the old picture only the old picture so one with the old picture the one with the old
याच्यात काय रोल बिल नसतो रे
नाही ना आता डिजिटल नाही टाइम होता आता रेटर मारून बसले असते टाइम होते
Just imagine if Gopal is Gopal but
एक बैकड्रॉप
अरे वो पागल है क्या रे?
अरे भाई बैठ जाओ।
फोटो दोस्त दोस्त ब्राउन शर्ट
वीडियो नहीं मिला सर।
राजेश भाई खा
एक्सक्यूज मी सर।
I'd now like to invite Harsha to say a few words and take the evening forward.
That photograph at the bottom, and that's the reason why. The photograph on the top is fine, but the photograph on the bottom. So maybe when it's his turn, he will tell us about that photograph, because I know he remembers. Only one person in this room has the right to contest anything that SMG does, and that is Milind in the front row, which he has already done. But a word about AMRIT, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for the number of years I've lost track of. We often say about people that they've got a ringside view of Indian cricket. Some of us have been given that title as well. We've been on the fringes. Here's someone who was actually in the middle of some path-breaking things that were happening in our cricket, but you never know. There was no grandstanding. There was no I was there, I know it all. There were no scoops leaked somewhere. It was all done with the dignity of the times. And that is why a lot of us, when Amrit said, I've done a book, we said, I don't care where it is we are coming. Because there was always a certain amount of class associated with Amrit. He's even starting to look like one of our idols, Tiger. Amrit's been part of history, but the one tour that I really do want to talk to him about was one that I was on as a pretty young person myself, working my backside off, but I don't think I did anywhere near as close as Amrit did. 36, Amrit, did I get the year right? 36 when India went to South Africa in 1992? Less? You look less. 36 for a young man on a tour where many things could have gone wrong. This was a tour where Indians didn't have visas before going. We didn't have diplomatic ties for a long time, didn't have even at the time at which we landed. And then to negotiate everything that was happening, walking a political tightrope, playing a difficult cricket series was I thought, an astounding job. Then 2004, then Pilcom. Actually, I think we don't write enough history in India ourselves. I think I'm culpable in that as well, but we don't write enough history. Amrit hasn't written the history, it's not his style to write history. He's just dropped us little teasers here and there in his style. Ye aise hua. And I purposely spoke ye aise hua in Hindi because long before English became very prolific, Amrit had this habit in his newspaper columns of dropping the right Hindi word to explain exactly what he wanted to say. So he's given us a little glimpse of all that he had a ringside view of in all these years, and we're going to talk to him about all that, along with someone who didn't have to have a ringside view because he was actually making it himself. So it's good to have someone with a ringside view of history and someone who was writing history, making history, with shots that other than Milind, everyone is going to gawk over. SNG, all yours. Oh, sorry, Amrit first, because Sachin's going to get something for SMG first. Sachin, have you got the Parle Ji?
Thanks, Akshay. And Sunny is the opener, but I'm getting a chance to go ahead of him today. At the CCI, it's great to be here. And one always feels the presence of Raj Singh Ji here. You walk in and the first thing you remember is Raj Singh Ji, Rajbhai. What an outstanding, passionate ambassador of Indian cricket. And you can't come here and not remember him. What other memory I have of the CCI is, I saw a film called Love Marriage. Devanand was a cricketer. He made a big score at the CCI. And after a while, he goes to the heroine Bala Sinha, declares himself out and says, "Mera dil leg before ho gaya." So that was the first instance of a batsman happily agreeing to an LB decision. Yeah. So I think Devanand is responsible for upholding the spirit of the game. So tribute to him. Anyway, more seriously, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have Sunny here. And we know about his brilliance and his mastery. And I put those photographs there because all you have to explain or say about Sunny is there. That is perfection, that is poetry, that is art and science. So Sunny, fantastic. I think Sunny made 10,122 runs, and with each run, respect for Indian cricket grew. You know, he gave India the respect, and that reflected in the runs he made. It said that in those days, you know, Indian cricket in batting was not at its best. There was much of what was called "Dhundo Dhundo Re Sajna," which is the term Sunny uses himself while batting. But Sunny had a bat which had only a middle. So phenomenal. Thank you very much, sir, for coming here and launching the book. Harsha also. Harsha said we go back a long way. Yes, we do. We crossed our paths, I think, early 92 in Australia, then in South Africa. But actually much before that. I was Secretary of Railway Sports and we were inaugurating a new hockey stadium in Gwalior. And we needed some help with the sponsorship. So we approached Sunny as PNG to find us a sponsor, which he did. Then he deputed a young executive, Harsha Bogle, to come to Gwalior to make sure everything was all right. This was, I think, late 1980s. Yeah, that was the inauguration of the hockey stadium at Gwalior because of Mr. Sandhya, and Harsha was there. So I think we go back a long way. More seriously, the book is about my association with Indian cricket. And this association happened by accident. It was not supposed to be. I was a young officer, Mr. Sindha was the railway minister, I got to know him. And he sort of opened the doors for me, he put me in a position which gave me access to the BCCI. He effectively gave me a cricket credit card with lifelong validity, which I'm still using. And he was an extraordinary man, very generous, very supportive. And I'm grateful that he found me worthy of his trust for such a long time. So I owe a lot to him, and my entire sort of association, connect with cricket, is entirely because of him. This book is not about, it's not my story. It's not even the story of Indian cricket. It is the story of what I saw myself, what I participated in as an observer, and it's a first-hand accurate account. So it's not what somebody told me over the bar or over a drink or something. It's actually what I saw, and I met people, what I remember, I wrote it down. It was difficult to start writing a book, and I was very skeptical. Koi padhega, who's interested in me? I have no jam to give. I have no breaking news or scandal to reveal. There is no message that the nation wants to know from me. So lots of doubts. But later I realized that I have been fortunate to be in a position where I have seen things. I have seen many iconic moments of Indian cricket. I saw, for instance, there was a book launched in 1984, Idols, in Delhi. That was after your Kanpur game, where that was not your best test match. But I remember that book launch where Lloyd at, I think, Prakati Madhan, Delhi said, Sunny's had a bad game, but Sunny's a master, who knows what happens in Delhi. And sure enough, in Delhi, 2900 of Sunny, 100 made in, I think, 96 balls. So that's how, sorry, 92, sorry. Plus 32 So, that's how it is. You have a very ordinary game at Kanpur. Lloyd says, Sunny is the champion. And true enough, 2 days later, that phenomenal innings. I also saw him at Bangalore, his last game. And that's one of the mysteries of Indian cricket, what happened at 86. Did he actually nick Tauseef? Iqbal Qasim. Did you actually nick Iqbal Qasim in 96? He's not telling after all these years. Well, I asked Imran Khan what happened. And actually, you should read this in the book, and I should not say it. But Imran said he was not out. So that's on record. He said he was not out. But that was epic inning. 96, when I think the team made 200. And that was a strange game because Salim Jafar, picked as a pace bowler, didn't bowl a single ball in 2 innings. Imran didn't bowl in 1 innings. I think Kapil bowled 5 overs or something. And strange game, everybody went wrong on the wicket, not Mr. Gavaskar, who made 96. And another thing which I'm sort of grateful to Sunny for is, in 1987, I was a young journalist looking for some assignments to cover the World Cup in Pakistan. So I again approached PNG, Pinru Kam Dilao, Paise Dilao to fund my trip. So he fixed up that I will write Imran's columns. I'll ghost Imran's columns to Pakistan. Now, Imran in those days in Pakistan was the most popular and powerful man. You couldn't approach and find Imran Khan there. But anyway, the first game was in Hyderabad Singh. I reached there, Imran is in the middle of 500 people at practice. I introduced myself, I have come and I'm supposed to write your columns. Sunny must have spoken to you. He said, हाँ, Sunny ने बात करी थी, हाँ, करना है. So I said, okay, we'll decide time. Just as I was leaving, he shouted in a voice which could be heard, I think, even in Lahore. मेरे को पैसे कितने मिल रहे हैं? I said, please ask Sunny about that. So that's some of the things about Sunny. I've also been lucky to be at some important moments of Indian cricket. For instance, Harsha mentioned the 1992 tour. First time Sachin was declared run out in Durban through a television replay. Also in 2002 in NatWest final, when Saurav did what he did, and which has been inspiring Salman Khan ever since. So, and also 2004 Multan, Viru made that 300. So I've been fortunate, I've been around some important times, so I decided to write. But a book is a mixture of, a lot of it is written as a tour diary. What happens on a tour, what happens on a day-to-day basis, on a match-to-match basis, what happens off-field. For instance, who sits where in a team bus? Does Sachin have an assigned place? How does Sachin choose his corner in the dressing room? What kind of fines are imposed for coming late? I think Sanjay is here, Sanjay Bhagat, around? So I think Sanjay had the duty on one of the tours to collect fines. So he was the appointed वसूल करने वाला आदमी कि जो late आएगा पैसे Sanjay collect करेगा. So there is stuff like that. There is some information about table tennis tournaments in the team room, putting competitions and the corridors of hotel. But there's also some serious stuff. For instance, the team meeting हो रही है. So there will be a discussion on what line to bowl to Inzamam, whether the fine leg should be fine or square. Also, whether calf should stand close at short cover or mid wicket. Also, a simple thing like how do you choose a ball when you go into field? The umpire comes and drops 12 balls on your dressing room, then you select one. So there's a process how you select a ball. So there is technical stuff in the book, and there is this so-called trivia in the book. And I think some of it will be interesting. I found it very interesting, and it was quite fascinating to sit through a team meeting with professionals discussing, details of how to approach a game, strategy, etc. And I would be an observer, keep silent. I think John Wright, who was manager on most of the tours, used to play a prank on me. After the meeting and end, he said, "Amrit, do you have something to say?" So hoping I'll say something stupid in the middle of a technical discussion among experts. But I was not so stupid. I kept my mouth shut and just heard what was happening. And more important, I made notes. So the tour diaries have been written not from memory, but from the notes I kept. For instance, when you go for a team dinner, so how do you pay? Who pays? And how do you decide? So occasionally it is you borrow Sachin Tendulkar's card, you pay on using it, and then you split it later. So I think there is a bit of this and a bit of that. And in the end, there are also certain profiles of eminent players and administrators whom I've had opportunity to interact with. But again, it's a personalized account. So if I'm writing about Sunny, if I'm writing about Tiger, it's not about Sunny the player or Sachin the player or Tiger the captain. It's about my personal experience, what I've learned and what's happened between them and me. For instance, just to give an example about Tiger. Tiger was a very reluctant person when it came to attending a function like this. If you asked him, his first reaction would be, कि किसी तरह से बचो इससे. If he had to go, he had agreed very reluctantly and set 2 ground rules. One, only half an hour. So quickly in, quickly out. Next, no speech. तो अगर ये 2 condition मंजूर हैं फिर तो मैं आऊँगा, नहीं तो नहीं. Anyway, I think I've been fortunate to be given this opportunity. It's been very rewarding, and as I said, it was not meant to be. It was an accident. I consider myself a concussion substitute. वो किसी वजह से मौका मिल गया, and I even landed up at times in what is called close catching positions. So thank you very much. I hope whoever reads it enjoys it, and we'll have a chat.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I think it's going to be a tremendous evening for the simple reason that what Amrit just told you is just what you would call the tip of the iceberg as far as cricketing, the experiences, cricketing stories, cricketing anecdotes are all about. And I think that is what you look for in a book. You don't want to know about career stats so much. You want to know what happened and how it happened, why it happened, and I think that's going to be part of the book. I've read a little bit of the book, not the whole book as yet. But going back many years ago, I think maybe about 40 odd years ago, when I first heard the name of AMRIT MATHUR, it was under a headline in a magazine, if I get the name of the magazine right, magazine called Onlooker, and the headline was Captain Outrageous. Now, Captain Outrageous was referring to me as the captain of the Indian team in Australia, where in the Sydney Test, which we lost, and as captain, having won the toss, I opted to bat, and we were skittled out for not too many, and then the Australians scored runs, etc. But of course, why was I called Captain Outrageous is because I opted to bat on what was, according to many sources, including the one mentioned earlier on over here, as being pretty knowledgeable about the game, who was at that particular point of time doing commentary for the All India Radio. He had come in to do commentary for All India Radio, and he must have called perhaps at that time, it was about 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning in Sydney for the game to start. He would have probably called England, called his friend Colin and said, "Hello, Sunil has won the toss and he has opted to bat. So what do you think?" And Colin must have been busy, must have been fast asleep, and he said, "Oh, no, that's not correct." And so that was taken by this particular gentleman who Amrit spoke very glowingly about at the start of his speech. That was then used by him in the All India commentary, radio commentary, to suggest that the pitch was damp, etc., etc. I don't even know whether he had gone to the pitch to have a look whether the pitch was damp or not. It was the first day of a test match, and of course in those days, you have a little bit of grass on the surface, and those were the days when you didn't have a cook-over of ball, the ball moved around a little bit. So that, and I'm saying to myself, this Amrit Mathur, I then found out he hadn't actually been anywhere in Australia at that stage. I said he's sitting in New Delhi, and he's writing this, and of course later on, you come to know that headlines are not in the hands of the person who writes a column, but it is the publisher or the editor who decides on the headline. So that was my first introduction to Amrit Mathur. Wasn't the most pleasant of introductions. I was waiting to catch up with him at some stage, but of course, I think what you would have noticed over your interaction with him is he's got a pretty disarming way about him, and so we hit it off, and we've been good friends ever since. When the invitation came, the invitation said for the release of the book, and I was actually relieved to read that word release, despite the fact that in his talk just now, a little before me, he used the word launching the book. Now, the book has already been launched in New Delhi. There was another one in Bengaluru a week, 10 days ago. And thankfully, while he used the word launch, it was in the invitation that went to everybody, the word used was release. Because if he had used the word launch in that invitation card, I would have had to say that you had more launches than ISRO has had. So there was a book I remember Clive Lloyd releasing many years ago, which again, it was a launch, and that was about the 6th or the 7th launch in different cities, and actually that's where I actually am picking that up from, where he actually said, hello, you had more launches than in Cape Canaveral in USA. But you almost got there. Today, it's the third launch, and I believe you're having a launch stroke release in Kolkata. But I think it'll be worth it. Worth it because I think it makes sense. Makes sense to be able to go to different cities, to be able to get people to tell and to read about the experiences. Because this is something which not everybody is fortunate to do. To be able to be, in the middle of the action, in the sense that you're there in the change room, you're seeing people react to situations, you're seeing people, some of the biggest names in the game, how they cope with pressure, how they release pressure. I know you probably, I don't know whether you mentioned about people coming back after getting a bad call and throwing their bats and kicked around, etc. I don't know whether you mentioned that, but these kind of things happen. And if you've been able to be there, you understand the players a lot better, because players are, after all, human. They're like everybody else. They have their own, fears, worries, concerns, and to be able to actually see that, firsthand, to be able to sit with them maybe occasionally and not say a word, just be somebody who's just sitting there listening, taking the brunt and absorbing it, but not really, because sometimes people have to vent, people have to come out with their frustrations. To be able to do that in the change room must have been a fantastic experience. Not the most enjoyable of experiences, but surely an experience from which you would have understood the psyche of being an India cricketer. I don't think there is any other cricket team in the world which is under as much pressure, the pressure of expectations, like the Indian team. Because every match that the Indian team plays, the fans, the followers, not just in India, but the Indian cricket followers all over the world expect and want the Indian team to win. And we all know in sport that sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But the pressure can be telling. And I think that is the pressure that the Indian team is currently experiencing, with everybody wanting them to win the Asia Cup, wanting them to win the World Cup, which is going to take place in a couple of in a month and a bit. But I think this is where we, as cricket followers, need to show a little bit more understanding. That there will be days that the team will not be able to play up to its potential, and let's keep our fingers crossed that if these days happen, they happen at the league stage and not at the knockout stage. And so, therefore, with the cumulative prayers of all of us, I think we will be able to will and pray for India to win not just the Asia Cup but also the World Cup. We did, I think, as a nation, as a nation that follows sport, we did win 24 hours back or 48 hours back for Neeraj Chopra to win. I think all of us, we stayed up just to be able to watch, and we were praying. We had our fingers crossed, we had our hearts in our mouth, hoping that and praying that he would win, and he did. So this is what I request all of you to convey to other Indian sports lovers, to please do that, so that our team can go on to win both the Asia Cup